$56 billion. That is how much trade now flows between Canada and Mexico annually. A 12-fold increase since 1994 that nobody in Washington saw coming. And this morning, Mark Carney just weaponized that relationship to end American trade dominance in North America forever. Not through threats, not through tariffs. Through one secret mission to Mexico City that restructured continental commerce while Trump was busy tweeting about annexation. The man who once controlled global monetary policy just delivered the most devastating economic blow to American hegemony in modern history. Canada and Mexico will need each other more than we ever have. That was Cameron McKay, Canada's ambassador to Mexico, speaking in December about what he called the largest trade mission Canada has ever deployed to any foreign country, not routine diplomacy, strategic realignment. And while Trump threatens tariffs and breaks off negotiations, Carney is quietly building the alliance that makes American leverage irrelevant. But before we dive into this incredible story, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on the stories that truly matter. Tonight, we're showing you how Mark Carney's secret February mission to Mexico just rewrote the rules of North American trade. Why a comprehensive strategic partnership signed in September is costing America trillion-dollar influence, and what Trump's panicked response reveals about Washington's crumbling continental control. Let me tell you what happened on the 18th of September 2025 that changed everything. Mark Carney stood alongside Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico City and announced something extraordinary: a new comprehensive strategic partnership between Canada and Mexico. The language was diplomatic. The implications were revolutionary. For the first time in their 80-year relationship, Canada and Mexico were elevating their partnership to a level that positions them as strategic alternatives to reliance on the United States. But here is what makes this moment so significant. 3 months earlier, Trump had imposed 25% tariffs on both countries. He had broken off trade talks. He had threatened to dismantle the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement entirely. Standard Washington playbook: divide and conquer, force each country to negotiate separately from positions of weakness, extract maximum concessions through economic pressure. Trump's fatal assumption was that Canada and Mexico had no alternative but to accept American terms. He was catastrophically wrong, and Mark Carney just proved it. The Canada-Mexico Action Plan focuses on 4 pillars: shared prosperity, security, inclusion, and sustainability. But the real message is in what goes unstated. Both countries recognize that the United States under Trump is an unreliable partner. They need each other to survive his chaos. Carney announced immediate concrete actions. A major trade mission to Mexico planned for February 2026, $9.9 million in funding for United Nations projects supporting migrant integration and combating fentanyl trafficking. A commitment to make North America the most competitive, dynamic, and resilient economic region in the world. That last phrase is particularly significant: not strengthen our relationship with the United States. Not support trilateral North American trade, make the region competitive and resilient. Which means building structures that work even when one partner is actively trying to destroy the framework. The numbers tell the story of systematic decoupling. Canadian direct investment in Mexico reached $46.4 billion in 2024, making Mexico Canada's 9th largest foreign direct investment destination. Canada is the largest foreign investor in Mexico's mining sector, but it is the sectors that reveal the strategic intent: advanced manufacturing, clean technologies and energy, information and communications technology, agriculture and food processing. These aren't commodity trades. These are integrated supply chain partnerships that take years to build and decades to fully realize. And they're being built right now while Trump threatens both countries with economic destruction. Here is where Mark Carney's background becomes crucial. This isn't a career politician making grand pronouncements. This is a man who ran the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis, who served as governor of the Bank of England during Brexit chaos, who understands global supply chains, currency markets, and economic warfare better than anyone in North American politics. When Carney talks about strategic partnerships, he is not talking about photo opportunities. He is talking about restructuring continental commerce. The February 2026 trade mission is the operational proof. Hundreds of Canadian businesses have applied to participate. The demand is so high that organizers worry they may not have enough logistical capacity to accommodate everyone. The mission will target 6 key sectors: advanced manufacturing, clean technologies and clean energy, information and communications technology, agriculture and processed foods, agricultural technology, and creative industries. Participants will visit Mexico City plus either Monterrey or Guadalajara depending on their sector. This isn't symbolic diplomacy. This is Canada deploying its full commercial apparatus to embed Canadian businesses deeply into the Mexican economy at exactly the moment. Trump is trying to force both countries into submission through tariff threats. The timing is devastating for American interests. The mission happens just months before the mandatory review of the Canada-United States Mexico agreement begins in July 2026. By February, Canada will have established hundreds of new commercial relationships with Mexico that create facts on the ground before Trump tries to renegotiate or dismantle the trade framework. And here is what makes it particularly brilliant. Canadian businesses are desperate for this opportunity. Ambassador McKay told media that with the pressure currently on the Canadian business community from Trump's tariffs, there has never been a better opportunity and more motivation for Canadian businesses to think about expanding and looking at whether Mexico is a good market for them. Trump's pressure isn't bringing Canada to heel. It is pushing Canadian businesses to build alternatives to the American market. Every tariff threat, every broken negotiation, every annexation comment drives more Canadian investment toward Mexico and away from dependence on American reliability. To understand why this partnership terrifies Washington, you need to understand what Mexico offers Canada strategically: direct access to Latin American markets through Mexico's extensive trade agreements, manufacturing platforms that take advantage of lower labor costs while maintaining North American content requirements. Most importantly, alternative routes to Asian markets that bypass American infrastructure entirely. Mexican President Sheinbaum has stated clearly that Mexico wants direct access to Canadian ports, not as a backup option, as a primary route for Mexican goods to reach Asian markets without depending on United States infrastructure or facing potential United States tariff barriers. Canada is exploring this seriously. Mexican goods could enter Canada under CUSMA rules, then be shipped to Asia through Canadian Pacific ports under Trans-Pacific Partnership terms, completely bypassing United States territory. This is the nightmare scenario for American strategic planners. Two neighboring countries with massive economies, building deep partnerships that reduce American leverage over both. It is exactly what decades of United States trade policy tried to prevent, and Trump's aggressive approach has accelerated it. The security cooperation provisions reveal how deep this realignment goes. Canada and Mexico are coordinating on fentanyl interdiction, migrant integration, and border security. Not because Trump demands it, because both countries recognize these as shared challenges requiring bilateral solutions. When Trump threatens tariffs over fentanyl flows, he assumes the United States is the only actor capable of addressing the problem. But Canada and Mexico working together can implement security measures that address American concerns while building their own capacity independent of United States assistance. Here is what the February trade mission really represents. For decades, Canada and Mexico were trading partners, but their relationship was always mediated through the United States. NAFTA was fundamentally a hub and spoke system with America as the hub. The comprehensive strategic partnership changes that architecture. For the first time, Canada and Mexico are building direct bilateral mechanisms that operate independently of United States participation. This represents a fundamental reordering of North American economic geography. Instead of the United States as the indispensable hub, you have 3 centers of economic activity with bilateral relationships of roughly equal importance. Canada trades with both Mexico and the United States. Mexico trades with both Canada and the United States. And critically, Canada and Mexico can trade with each other in ways that do not require American participation or approval. The February mission is not just about economics, it is about political positioning before the CUSMA review begins. Trump has made clear he wants major changes. He has complained about Canadian supply management for dairy, alleged subsidies for softwood lumber, digital services taxes, and numerous other long-standing irritants. More fundamentally, Trump's trade officials have suggested they might prefer separate bilateral deals with Canada and Mexico rather than continuing the trilateral framework. But here is what makes Carney's strategy brilliant. By July, when formal negotiations begin, Canada and Mexico will have spent 6 months deepening their bilateral partnership. Hundreds of Canadian companies will have established new commercial relationships in Mexico. Both countries will be able to present united positions in negotiations. Trump wanted to divide and conquer. Canada and Mexico are arriving at the negotiating table as partners, not supplicants. They can credibly threaten that if Trump tries to dismantle CUSMA, they will simply deepen their bilateral cooperation and leave the United States to negotiate separately with both of them from a position of reduced leverage. The arithmetic is simple. Over 85% of Canadian trade and 84% of Mexican trade with the United States currently moves under CUSMA exemptions from Trump's tariffs. Ending the agreement would immediately subject all that trade to punitive levies, causing massive price increases for American consumers and businesses. Canada and Mexico can survive that scenario because they're building alternatives right now. The United States cannot because American supply chains are deeply dependent on Canadian and Mexican inputs that cannot be quickly replaced. So what does North American trade look like if current trends continue? Canada and Mexico operate deeply integrated supply chains across advanced manufacturing, technology, clean energy, and agriculture. Mexican goods flow to Asian markets through Canadian Pacific ports. Canadian companies use Mexican manufacturing platforms to serve Latin American markets. Bilateral trade between Canada and Mexico reaches $100 billion annually. The United States remains a significant trading partner for both countries, but American leverage has diminished dramatically. When Washington threatens tariffs, Ottawa and Mexico City respond by deepening bilateral cooperation rather than capitulating to American demands. Supply chains have been restructured to provide redundancy that insulates both countries from United States economic coercion. This is not speculation. This is the future being built right now by hundreds of Canadian businesses preparing for the February trade mission, by Mexican officials working with Canadian counterparts on supply chain integration, by both governments investing in the infrastructure and relationships that reduce American leverage. Mark Carney spent September in Mexico City signing comprehensive partnerships. He spent December planning the largest trade mission in Canadian history. He'll spend February embedding hundreds of Canadian businesses into Mexican markets. While Trump threatens annexation and breaks off trade talks over advertisements, Carney is systematically constructing the alternative to American dominance that Washington spent decades trying to prevent. The secret wasn't the mission itself. The secret was how completely Trump misunderstood what was happening while it was being built. He thought tariff threats would force submission. Instead, they provided perfect justification for Canada and Mexico to do what they should have done decades ago: build partnerships that don't require American permission. The panic in Washington is palpable. Congressional committees are now publishing reports documenting how Canadian-Mexican cooperation threatens American strategic interests. Republican senators from border states are quietly reaching out to Ottawa, trying to understand if there is still time to repair relationships Trump has systematically destroyed. Business groups that supported Trump's tariff strategy are now lobbying for immediate de-escalation as they watch their supply chains reorganize around them. But it is too late. The infrastructure being built, the relationships being forged, the partnerships being signed, don't reverse just because American political leadership changes. Once Canadian companies have established manufacturing partnerships in Mexico, once Mexican goods flow routinely through Canadian ports to Asian markets, once both countries have proven they can coordinate security challenges without American mediation, the leverage Trump thought he possessed disappears forever. When the largest trade mission in Canadian history leaves for Mexico in February, it won't just be carrying Canadian business representatives, it will be carrying the future of North American trade. A future where American dominance is no longer assumed, where Canada and Mexico chart their own course, and where Mark Carney's strategic vision reshapes continental commerce for generations.